I would have never been prepared for this. Oh, so good. Kyle's hot dogs. Oh, it has been too long. Oh, it has been too long. Wow, has it been too long? Oh yeah, no, it has been too long. How long has it been? Oh, that's too long. No, that's too long. Luckily for us, luckily for you, we get to finish it. Luckily for me, we get to finish it. Because as you can tell, I have not done it. We actually have 6 endings left. We don't have just 5. Whilst editing, I realized that we missed one. We're gonna get it really quick. So I am actually so good at this game, I managed to get an ending on accident. If you go to work, if you go to be a hot dog salesman, unprepared, 100% unprepared, you can go to the shopping center, which I accidentally did and unknowingly got an ending that I had not got last time. So we're gonna go to the shopping center. Kyle beelined for the local shopping mall, reasoning that there would probably be hot dogs somewhere inside. But as Kyle walked inside, he was met with a new sensation. Around him, bright lights flashed. Companies told him about the products and services they offered. It was foreign. Kyle had never gone shopping. Immediately, Kyle fell victim to 100 different advertising schemes, all at once. He began to spin and froth at the mouth, dreaming of the many products that were within his immediate grasp. It was time for Kyle to spend. Kyle reached into his pocket, removed every bill and piece of change, and ran to the nearest store. Still frothing, he approached the woman behind the counter and screamed. Kyle gestured dramatically and flicked his bloodshot eyes around. Without an answer, he slammed his money onto the counter and started grabbing clothes items with both hands. Kyle continued to voraciously grab every single item he could find, filling his pockets, shirt, and eventually underwear. But it wasn't enough. Kyle whisked into the foyer and entered a different store. Over a period of several hours, Kyle systematically emptied every store in the mall of all their goods. Strangely, Kyle had stumbled upon an incredible business decision. Now that Kyle controlled all products in the
metropolitan
area, all businesses had to flow through him. Kyle became a shopping mogul. He renovated his apartment into a one-stop shop for all needs. Within a few months, the sheer amount of customers entering and exit his apartment caused a clog. A solid mass of body fat blocked entrance and exit. The inside of Kyle's apartment had become its own ecosystem. Life prospering in the newly formed bubble. Couples wed, burials, joy, culinary arts. Kyle had created something very special. Kyle created a new society. What a way to hop back into this game. Making our own society beautiful. Kyle exited his bed and took a quick glance around his bedroom. Kyle made his way over to his desk and sat down. Kyle opened up the side drawer on his desk and grabbed one of the items stored there. Kyle grabbed the small key he kept in his desk. Kyle opened the closet. Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is. Kyle put on his hot dog suit, which he had made by stitching hot dogs together when he was a child. Kyle returned to the center of the bedroom. Kyle walked into the small hallway that connects the rooms of his apartment together. Kyle walked to the center of the kitchen. Kyle wanted to access the pantry, but found it was locked with a small keyhole. The pantry door lock creaked as if it hadn't moved for years, but eventually opened. Instead of an assortment of canned goods and grains, Kyle's pantry stored his massive amounts of bottled lard. Kyle searched around the pantry for a selection of hot dogs. After a few minutes of searching, Kyle found several stashes of old hot dogs loose and in paper bags. He gathered them together and saw that he had a serviceable amount of hot dogs. Kyle walked out into the middle of the road and took a long, pondering look around him. Kyle approached his downstairs neighbor's door and knocked. A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. She looked at Kyle expectantly. Kyle unhinged his jaw and swallowed Gabby whole. Job done. Kyle returned to the middle of the street. Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first day as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. As he unpacked, Kyle realized he had never gotten a food cart to make his hot dogs in. Kyle had no choice but to place his hot dogs on the ground. Looking at the hot dogs strewn across the sidewalk, Kyle realized he had found a golden opportunity. Kyle began to roll his hot dogs around in the dirt, pressing firmly so it would be embedded into the food. After a while, his back became sore from bending over. Kyle continued with the bottom of his shoe. Soon, all of the hot dogs had been sufficiently seasoned. Kyle swept his hot dogs into a pile and sat on the concrete next to him. Kyle then spat Gabby out of his mouth. Gabby tumbled onto the ground. She stared at Kyle. "Gabby," said Kyle, "I need you to be my hot dog cart because I forgot to bring one." "Kyle, I really don't want to do that." Gabby got to her feet to go back to her house. But then Kyle had an idea. "Gabby, no," said Kyle excitedly. "You will sell my hot dogs and I will be a table." Kyle got down on his hands and knees and motioned with his head for Gabby to come over. Gabby pursed her lips, but having nothing better to do, decided to play along. Gabby piled the hot dogs on top of Kyle, sat on the ground behind him, and stared forward with a bored look. Within a few minutes, a curious crowd of observers had gathered. Gabby looked at them, but did not speak. Kyle began to grow worried. "Gabby! Gabby," he whispered, prodding her knee. "You need to tell them to buy my hot dogs." Gabby smoothly put her hands on Kyle's mouth and then addressed the crowd. "Hello, everyone," said Gabby. "It's time." Gabby immediately started ballooning in size, sprouting new arms and mouths from every part of her body. The mouths on her body opened and started to spit out camera bots. They crawled away to scour the city. Gabby had turned into her ultimate form, the Mega Bug Vigilante. Under Gabby's watch, crime was completely eliminated in the city. Peace was everywhere. But over the coming months, Gabby continued to grow and produce camera bots. Eventually, the city was completely covered by Gabby's body and creations. There was little room to sit or walk. During this time, Kyle conducted many interviews on the current state of Gabby and the benefits and deficits of her reign. But through the new, exciting, distinctive time in his life, Kyle felt a bit empty. He did not manage to sell a single hot dog. Gabby protected. His head was about Gabby. Why? Oh, I missed this. Kyle exited his bed and took a quick glance around his bedroom. Kyle quickly crouched down on the floor, realizing his immediate need for hot dogs. Kyle started looking around for hot dogs. He crawled around, spreading layers of mold to the side with his hands and picking out interesting items. Kyle couldn't find any hot dogs, but instead he found a pile of love letters he had written in high school. He pocketed the envelopes and got back to his feet. Kyle returned to the center of the bedroom. And then downstairs neighbor, Kyle approached his downstairs neighbor's door and knocked. A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. She looked at Kyle expectantly. "Good morning, neighbor," said Kyle cheerfully. Gabby looked at Kyle expectantly. "Gabby, this is important," said Kyle. "Do you have a pen I could borrow?" "Kyle," said Gabby, "don't you have even a single pen of your own?" "No, Gabby," Kyle said, clutching her arms and looking into her eyes. "I haven't written since high school." Gabby stared at Kyle and pursed her lips. After a moment, she took a pen out of her pocket. "Kyle, I'll give you a pen, but please be careful with what you write. Harsh words are a weapon to wield carefully." Kyle mumbled agreement, took the pen, and skipped away from Gabby's house. Kyle made his way over to his desk and sat down. Kyle took out the letters from his pocket and set them on the desk. Kyle looked at the letters in front of him for a moment. Then, in a burst of inspiration, he started to write. Ha! Write about fish! Kyle decided Abigail probably wanted to hear about fish. After writing about fish for a couple hours, Kyle finished and got up from the desk. Kyle returned to the center of the bedroom. Now we wait. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. As Kyle was unpacking, his hand brushed the old love letters he had picked up earlier. He stopped. Something tugged at Kyle's heart. These letters were a piece of himself. These letters were a piece of history. Kyle realized it was time to give these letters to their original, intended recipients. Kyle looked at the top letter of the stack. It was addressed to Abigail, a girl Kyle had liked during high school. Abigail had moved to the other side of the city with her husband a few years ago, but Kyle was willing to make the trip. Kyle skipped away to Abigail's house, letter in hand. It wasn't that Kyle liked Abigail anymore. It wasn't that he missed her. To Kyle, this was more important than that. After an hour of walking, Kyle finally reached Abigail's front door. With excitement in his heart, Kyle took a breath and knocked on the door. Abigail opened. "Kyle," she said, smiling, "what are you doing here? It's been so long." "Abby," said Kyle, "I have something I want to read to you." Kyle took the letter to Abigail, clutched in his hand, opened it, and began to read. "Hello, Abigail," said Kyle. "I'm very obsessed with fish. Sometimes I glue fish to my face and on my feet so I can feel like I am a fish. Then I wallow on the floor. I would not mind watching you eat whole fish. I believe consuming fish is the good way to bond with each other." Kyle looked at Abigail briefly to emphasize his next sentence. "I wish you were a fish because I like fish much better than you." Got her! Abigail put her hand on Kyle's letter. "Kyle, stop," she said. "There's no need for that." The plot twist! "Kyle, stop," she said. "There's no need for that because I am already a fish." Abigail suddenly spread and fizzed from her waist. Her face turned into a gasping mass with bugged eyes. Abigail fell to the ground and started flailing around, making wet flopping sounds against the pavement. Kyle was delighted. Kyle, Abigail, and her husband started a fast friendship. They spent evenings talking, laughing, and sharing meals. They talked about fish often. It was fulfilling and meaningful to all of them. Kyle had found a meaningful set of friends. I never would have seen that coming. I would have never been prepared for this. Oh, so good. We're gonna rewrite love letters again, but we're gonna choose the other option. So rewrite love letters. Kyle took the letters from his pocket and set them on the desk. Kyle looked at the letters in front of him for a moment. Then, in a burst of inspiration, he started to write. Point out recipient's flaws. Kyle decided to make some important comments about his high school crush that had been on his mind. After being upfront and honest, Kyle had produced a letter that was definitely weapon-like in nature. Kyle returned to the bedroom. With excitement in his heart, Kyle took a breath and knocked on the door. Abigail opened. "Kyle," she said, smiling, "what are you doing here? It's been so long." "Abby," said Kyle, "I have something I want to read to you." Kyle looked into Abigail's eyes, smiled, and opened the letter. "Hi, Abby," he read. "I do not understand how people can appreciate you. I pretend to have a crush on you, but it's only because I'm bored. I don't actually like you much at all. It starts with the fact that you're not attractive. If you took more time on your appearance, I might like you for real. But that wouldn't solve the problem of your bland and meaningless personality. That you probably can't fix." Kyle looked up and finished. "I would tell you to keep trying, but I'm not convinced it would make a difference." Abigail looked at Kyle softly. "Oh, Kyle, have you been bottling that up since high school?" She gave Kyle a supportive hug. "I'm sure that's been on your mind, and I'm glad you got it off your chest." Kyle accepted the hug. "It really has been. I've been thinking about it a lot." The two chatted idly for a while about high school and where their classmates were now. After about an hour, Kyle decided it was time to leave. Abigail and Kyle said their goodbyes. She told him to keep getting his feelings out so he could get past them. As Kyle walked home, he realized how incredibly abnormal it was to have such caring friends. Perhaps tomorrow he would start selling hot dogs, but tonight he was glad to have instead spent his time with good company. Aww! Honesty is in fact the best policy. Truth! Exit the bedroom hallway. Check the locked drawer. Use hot dog magic. With a hum and a pop, Kyle used his massive knowledge of hot dog magic to change the door handle into a hot dog. Kyle sucked the hot dog into his mouth, opened the door, and walked through. Kyle found himself in the room he stashed the various items sent to him by fans. Expecting a battle, Kyle grabbed the laser claymore. Visit the marketing agency. Kyle walked to the center of the agency entrance. It looked professional and had an attendant behind a desk. Kyle began rummaging in the trash can looking for anything interesting. After picking through wrappers and cups, Kyle noticed there was a red button stuck to the bottom of the can. Kyle eagerly pressed the button. The wall above the trash can started shifting and spinning, eventually revealing a slab of pewter with an indent. The slab was thick and old. A plaque was embedded in the top reading, "The slab embraces only a true weapon." Luckily for us, we have a laser claymore, cause that's a true weapon. Kyle inserted the laser claymore into the indent. The claymore fit perfectly, snapping into place. Small metal hooks came out of all sides of the slab to hold it in place. With a pop, fizz, and a magical elf chuckled, a human-sized rainbow gateway to another dimension appeared. That sentence. That's a beautiful sentence, and I'm sticking with it. The portal started sucking everything near it inwards, enveloping chairs, trash cans, and Kyle himself. Kyle became part of a dizzy swirl. Lights and colors flashed all around him. He spun in circles rapidly. And in a moment, Kyle fell into the gummy bear and claymore land, where all matter is either gummy bears or claymores. Kyle was approached by a group of roaming gummy wasteland elves. Because of the harsh environment they lived in, the elves used their kin as blunt weapons to fend off attackers. Not the claymores. They used each other. Kyle looked upon the elves and realized they must live in a depressed and war-torn culture. And then, in a moment of pure empathy, Kyle decided to help the elves. Kyle grabbed the two nearest elves, one in each hand, and started to give them a talking to about war and its troubles. "Hello, you two," said Kyle. "I wish to give you a bit of advice." But before Kyle could say anything more, the ground started shifting and morphed into a gummy bear monster. Kyle chucked the elves he was holding at the monster to fend it off, but was to no avail. The monster charged at Kyle, throwing the elves to the side as it sped forward. Kyle had no choice but to become a gummy bear monster himself. Only one thing will save me now. He started to cover himself in gummy bears and claymores. The substances stuck to his skin like meaningful, gooey hugs. Within moments of vicious, sticky movements, Kyle was covered in his new world's material. Then, something wonderful happened. Using a combination of determination, elf magic, and acting, Kyle truly transformed into a real gummy monster. But in his new form, Kyle was now not interested in fighting the other gummy monster. Kyle began swallowing every elf in sight in a wild, crazy rampage. Over the next several hours, Kyle rampaged the whole gummy world, eating every last elf whole. Kyle had gifted the elves with a warm, nutritious new world to live in. Over time, the elves created a new society inside Kyle's stomach. There was no need for war. They feasted on Kyle's stomach juices. Their culture entered a golden age. Eventually, Kyle turned back into a normal person and returned home, but the elves continued to live inside him. Kyle had saved a culture. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, we only have one more. Let's find it. Grab the supernatural artifact. This is one of the many mysterious artifacts Kyle had been sent over the years. Kyle stashed the mysterious artifact for later use. Kyle found himself in the room he stashed the various items sent to him by his fans. Kyle walked into the hallway that connects the rooms of his apartment together. No, not bedroom. Kitchen. Kyle walked to the center of the kitchen. Being in the kitchen gave Kyle a massive amount of hot dog related nostalgia. He stood still pondering. Kyle continued to think about hot dogs. Kyle still continued to think about hot dogs. He thought about their flavor. He thought about how different brands tasted different. Kyle thought about hot dog textures and their feelings in his hand. Kyle was still thinking about hot dogs. Kyle's skin began to dissolve its bonds and melt from standing still too long. Kyle began to spread across the floor, creating puddles through the kitchen. Kyle's jaw caved, causing the top of his head to slowly drop backwards and point towards the ceiling. Kyle sunk lower and lower. His height was soon half of what it was before. Chunks of his skin fell to the ground. Kyle's fingers and legs fell off, dissolving into drops of ooze as they dropped. Kyle was a large puddle of melted skin with bumps where his main features used to be. Kyle's atoms had lost all their bonds. He had turned into nothing more than a meat-based soup. The artifact bobbing on top of the soup of Kyle began to glow and shudder. Kyle's loose DNA had changed the artifact's power. It began to whine and lift into the air. Then, with a large bang and several flashes of light, the artifact blew into countless projectile pieces. Kyle was no longer soupy. He had been changed into a large bipedal hot dog. It's actual a hot dog. It's good. Kyle lived his life running from grocery store clerks and hungry puppies, but his career as a talk show host flourished. Viewers from all countries tuned in every week to see the strange antics of the sentient hot dog. Since Kyle had lost his ability to speak, most of his shows consisted of waving his arms up and down very meaningfully. Kyle remained famous, but also now, Kyle was hot dog. Kyle was hot dog. Ah, so good. I really wish this changed to Kyle was hot dog. That would have been the piece de resistance. Well, everybody, that's it. We're done. That's sad, actually. If you want to check this game out for yourself, I will link it in the description below. Base game is free, DLC costs a little bit of money. It's hilarious and wonderful and worth it. And John Szymanski is a beautiful human, so you wouldn't regret it. If you want to see whatever else we do on this channel, go ahead and smash buttons and maybe even comment below. And if you share this video, and you know that would make my heart go, I don't get this game. I don't get the endings. Oh, so good. And as always, have an amazing rest of your day. And here's your heart and your blink. Bye.
Gotta be protected.